What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Show. Abolverdi and Nick Torre here, and we've got football, basketball, baseball. It's that time of year, folks. A lot going on, and even though it's spring break, we got some news on the football front to get into with the team. They took a break from the practice field this week, but some news on their staff front. And then obviously the Gators underway in the SEC tournament. Baseball team opening SEC play this weekend against number 4 Texas A&M. Exciting times, Nicholas. How are you doing, my friend?
Busy, tired, but ready for SEC baseball to start. Been watching all the tournament action. This is probably the only time I really tune into college basketball. College basketball starts in March.
Well, and that's what it is. I mean, obviously, the tournament is such an exciting thing that goes down in Nashville. Obviously, we were talking before the show, Tennessee getting upset here on Friday, and obviously the Gators got it done against Georgia in the second round, looking to keep advancing. And we'll talk about what this postseason means and what a successful March would look like for this program. But I want to start on the football front and some news that came out on Friday as we learned some contract details for several staff members, new coaches being extended, all of the 9, the new strength coach as well. And we also learned some new figures in terms of Florida's financial report and a significant increase in the recruiting budget. So we will get into all of that on today's show. And we'll kick things off with let's start with the extensions, Nick, because I think that was some of the more pressing news in recent months, trying to figure out where things stood on that front. And we had reported at Gators Online that 3 coaches had been extended, even though nothing was announced. And then we learned after the fact that there was another guy getting an extension and a promotion, and that's Russ Callaway. And he kind of headlines this list, Nick, because of a significant salary increase that he was able to earn for himself after being promoted to co-OC.
Yeah, shout out to Florida. I think I put my Freedom of Information Act in when bowl games are still going on, and we just got these. But Russ Callaway, I think that's the biggest one. I think we'll figure out who's calling plays. You know what I mean? Is it going to be Billy? Is it going to be Russ? Is this just a title? I think you reported that Russ had opportunities to go elsewhere, including the NFL. So I think this keeps him here. He goes up from $300,000 to $550,000 and gets that co-OC title.
It's a big bump.
The other guys were Rob Sale was extended back in January of 2022, so over a year ago.
Just now learning about it.
Yeah, basically coached 1 year and got an extension through January 31st of 2025. Jabbar Jalouk and Mike P. were extended in February of this year, and that also runs through 2025. And then Billy Gonzalez is on his original contract that he signed March of 2023. And that runs through January 31st of 2025. And then I included it in our story, but all of the language of termination for cause or without cause is in there as well. I thought it's interesting to note how Florida is now structuring these, where if you leave to go to another SEC program, it's 60. You have to pay back the University Athletic Association 60% of whatever is left on your contract, and if you go somewhere else, it's 40%. And I think schools will pay that buyout. Like Florida paid a 6-figure buyout to get Sean Spencer from Duke when they wanted to get him on the initial staff. So I think schools will end up footing that bill, but gives the University Athletic Association some money back when they're going to go and find a replacement when a guy leaves.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think all of these outside of Russ were to be expected in terms of the extensions and the figures and what have you. Obviously, Russ is the most notable news, but there has been at least some change in title on the offensive side and not on the defensive side, which I thought was interesting. How, and again, this could not matter at all, but it is. On offense, there is now co-OCs, and Rob's title has gone from just straight offensive coordinator to co-OC. And I note that because on the defensive side of the ball, Austin Armstrong is still listed as the defensive coordinator. He is not listed as the co-defensive coordinator. So maybe that's because Ron Roberts has some special titles.
I mean, we asked Ron Roberts what the title meant, and he had no idea. Like, what is an executive head coach, co-defensive coordinator?
In my mind, I feel like I have an idea of what his role is, but it's kind of hard to explain. Which
I think it's a really interesting dynamic because Ron Roberts was the defensive coordinator at Louisiana, and Austin Armstrong was the linebackers coach at Louisiana.
He was his graduate assistant when they
graduate assistant.
He wasn't even a linebackers coach.
Wasn't even an on-field coach or a paid assistant, a grad assistant. Ron Roberts knows the defense because it's his defense. Austin Armstrong is 25 years younger than Ron Roberts. They're saying all the right things now, Zach, that Austin's couldn't call plays. How are the egos when you're on a 2-game losing streak? Or how are the egos if you give up 45 points? I think it remains to be seen. It's definitely... I think unique. It's cool to have Austin's mentor back, and everything is nice now because everything is cool in the spring. But what happens when adversity hits in the fall?
Yeah, I'm not worried as much about like there being friction as who's in charge, and who.
That's what I mean. Like Austin's in charge.
Yes,
and then when the guy who's 25 years older than him is now being attached to, let's say, the defense struggles like it did last year. And you have egos, and it's like, hey, man, maybe you shouldn't be in charge.
Sure. I see it as, look, I think for them to come out and say, hey, since we worked together at Louisiana, he's been having weekly conversations, and maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I know he does talk to the guys that he's mentored over the years on a regular basis, and Austin is one of those guys. So if that's real and that's true, and they've been talking since Austin worked under him, and they were talking last year when he was the defensive coordinator at Florida, and Ron was trying to give him advice. I just think that's going to continue. And when we say executive head coach of the defense, like it's almost a dynamic to me of like, okay, and obviously Ron Roberts is not Nick Saban, but like when Nick Saban was the head coach, and it was his defense, and he was the defensive coordinator, obviously. And then at some point, it was, okay, Kirby Smart, you are like my young protege. You are now the defensive coordinator, and you are the play caller. And I think everybody recognized that, and he did have that role. But in the back of everybody's mind, everybody knew this is still Nick Saban's defense. And in the middle of a drive, if he wants to trump Kirby and make a call, or if he sees something that Kirby's not seeing as a young coordinator, he's going to step in and make that adjustment. I think that's what we'll have here, because I think Ron, if I'm just reading him correctly after talking to him, I think that his part of his role here is to set Austin up for success for the future, not take away responsibilities from him. So, but yeah, to your point, Nick, like, if they do get into a game or a bad situation and Ron does have to take over in the middle of a drive or scrap some things that Austin had planned, how does he deal with some of that adversity? You would hope that because that is his mentor and they have that respect between each other, that there at the very least won't be like friction or arguing or but it could, it could create some issues if it's not, peace and harmony.
Everyone's happy when you're 0-0.
No doubt. So, With those titles, we also learned the contract details on Friday for Ron Roberts, as well as the new assistants on Florida's staff, guys that are first-year hires. That includes Roberts, Will Harris, Gerald Chapman, and Jonathan DeCoster. And those figures are available at GatorsOnline.com. If you want to read through Nick's stories, not only on Russ Callaway, but the other assistants as well. And Roberts will be at a base salary of $750 in 2024, but it jumps up to $950 in 2025. So he signed a 2-year deal with the Gators, as did Will Harris, and as did Gerald Chapman as well. I think that those were obviously some hires that kind of got going first. And Roberts is like you said, Nick, he's kind of the one on the defensive side that's going to attract the most attention. Obviously, they're investing in him and his role, and but at the same time, there's obviously help needed on that side of the ball, and we'll see what type of a difference that can make. We also learn some contract details on Friday for another new hire and an important hire, and that is Tyler Miles, the new director of strength and conditioning. He signed a 1-year deal for $400,000 that runs through January 31st, 2025. Obviously, was promoted during the offseason after Craig Fitzgerald's departure. We've talked about it, written about a lot of Gators Online about how he really impressed in the interim role, not once but twice, because he was also the interim strength coach when Mark Hockey got reassigned. So he gets this new deal, a 1-year deal. Nick, I don't know what the norm is there for strength coaches and whether they typically sign multi-year deals or 1-year deals. Hockey was obviously on a multi-year deal. What are your thoughts on him just getting one for now? Is that kind of a byproduct of the factors that play? You know, obviously he's getting a shot here, and maybe you just want to commit 1 year now, or do you feel like maybe because of how things went with Hockey, they didn't want to do a 2-year deal again with the strength coach?
Yeah, I think it's probably just the timing of everything that led to that. I mean, Hockey signed a multi-year deal and was extended after the first year. Florida's UAA is giving the football program anything and everything they need, or they're asking for and saying they need to be successful.
We'll get into that.
So if Florida was like, if Billy was like, hey, we need to give Tyler a 3-year deal, the UAA is not being like, oh, man, you know, maybe we don't have the money for that. I think it's just a timing thing. Like, you signed Craig Fitzgerald to a deal, and he left because of the circumstances of his close friend getting a job, a head coaching job, and asking him to come rejoin, getting the band back together, so to say. So I don't think it's anything against Tyler or lack of faith in Tyler or anything like that. It's just, hey, you're already kind of doing the job. We need you to do the job. Let's like get something on paper quickly, and then it'll buy us time to work on, a longer deal.
And with that news and these recent hires, Florida's coaching staff is now set for 2024. Definitely some changes this offseason, and a lot of new faces, a lot of new roles. Nick, as you look at this coaching staff now in its totality, what do you like most about the staff, and maybe some of the adjustments or new pieces, and what has you concerned about where things stand with the staff?
Roberts has a lot of experience. I think that's good, especially with how young and inexperienced the rest of the defensive staff is. I think the staff as a whole is very young and inexperienced, and that can be good, and it can be bad. I don't love 2 offensive line coaches. We'll see how that mixes and gels, and if it shows any benefits on the field. I don't think it has in either of the first 2 seasons. And then I'm really interested to see Russ Callaway. I've had somebody tell me that like he will be calling plays. Florida has added because I think it will be a new rule in effect for this upcoming season. radio communication with the quarterback and with a defensive player. You would assume it would be a linebacker, but like in the NFL, you can make it a safety if you want, just one person. And that Russ has been working on calling plays through that. So that's one thing for me. Clearly Billy Napier, clearly Billy Napier didn't think the offense was the issue. We know that Russ had other opportunities, which we believe or know played a factor in him getting the job, the new job title. How does that play out? And what does Florida's offensive flow and scheme and play calling do? And listen, Russ had more input last year, especially as the season went on. I know we throw it on Billy, and as you were, explaining the Nick Saban thing and Kirby Smart, I'm listening to you explain that. I'm like, well, that's just Florida's offense. Like, it's Billy's offense, and you're just giving Russ, sure, like a happy title, and just, hey, you go over by the other tight ends while I'm calling plays. But I'm interested to see what does that look like, and will Billy call plays all spring? Will Billy call plays in the fall, or will that be something that he gives up to Russ?
Yeah, and you mentioned an interesting point there, Nick, about how Russ had already not only been involved last year after he got promoted from analyst to tight ends coach, but as the season went on, took on more responsibilities, got more involved in the operation of how they execute their system, their game plan, their play calls. He was on the field sidelining the calls in, so he's literally listening to Billy every time he makes a call, getting a feel for how he sees the game, how he likes to call things, what that verbiage is. And if you listen to Callaway's comments when he met with the media at the start of spring, to your point, Nick, he said that they already started that transition a little bit last year and were feeling their way through it, and they kind of grew as they went, and they got to a point where they got in a good rhythm. And I think that's important to note, because if Billy is going to hand over the offense to somebody, to your point, Nick, it's going to be someone that is going to run his system, that is going to be able to execute what he wants, and to have a guy that's now been working with him for 2 years has a sense for what that looks like. That could be a dynamic that works out. So we'll continue to monitor that, obviously.
And I would put one of them. I mean, it's not going to be the head coach. Put Russ upstairs during games. Last year, Florida, I think, had Mike P. and Darnell Stapleton upstairs. It's like, put one of your offensive coordinators upstairs where you can see the whole field. You're still on the radio and you can have communication. But I think there's value to getting a different look, especially if you're going to be collaborating, at least, even collaborating.
And that'll be interesting. What do they do? Because all last year he was on the field and he was signaling in the plays. So
yeah,
does he stay in that role?
I think we remember that great picture of Kyle Trask. There are dozens of players that can signal in the play calls.
Oh yeah.
And very easy for somebody else to coach the tight ends on the field.
Sure, no, but is that part of their operations?
Right.
Being on the field next to Billy, do they want him on the field? If they might want to keep him there.
I'm just making the argument that I would like to see one of those guys upstairs.
Put Billy upstairs.
That'd be wild. That'd be like Hugh Freeze when he was at Liberty, in the hospital bed.
I mean, Ron would be the coach on the field. Executive head coach, baby.
For sure. Yeah, maybe that's it. We'll be able to, walk down when we're in the press box and knock on the door and be like, "Hey, Billy, Twitter does not love your play calling right now. Just thought you should know." Gonna head back. I don't know if he wants to be up in the box.
He doesn't want to see us, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, let's switch gears here. We'll talk some recruiting budget and numbers and figures and all that stuff. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide better care to his patients. If you have dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your individual needs. Give their office a call, 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And along with the contract details that came out Friday, there was also the financial report for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. And a lot of figures in there, worth noting, some small changes, but I think most notably is the recruiting spending. We know that there's been investment in that. That was really from the onset. That first year, you really weren't going to see the numbers jack up because of how the fiscal year is arranged with the calendar. So it was going to take this 2022-2023 report to come out to really see how much more Florida is spending in recruiting. And it's not just football. It is across the board. For the 2022-2023 fiscal year, this one that just passed, the Gators spent $4.5 million on recruiting as a program for all sports. And that was up from $2.9 million the year before. Now, the biggest beneficiary of that, as you would imagine, was
women's
football.
Tennis. Oh,
okay. Good guess. Their recruiting budget went up $1.2 million, actually a little bit more than $1.2 million, went up from 1.6 to 2.8 in recruiting spending. So that's an increase of 78%. And so a lot of investment there in that space. And, we've heard it. We've seen it, obviously, the Army and in the amount of, just more that they put into their recruiting operation, their department. But now, Nick, we actually have some figures attached with that really shows how much more they're doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of cookie cakes, man, which you can't leave them up in the room anymore. Yeah, it's recruiting is the lifeblood of college football. If you're not getting players in, Kevin O'Sullivan during the, run of Logan Shore, AJ Puck, Dane Dunning, Brady Singer, Alex Faedo, Jackson Coher would tell me all the time, great players make any coach look better than they are. And you have to do that through recruiting. In the NFL, you've got trades and you've got free agency. In college football, you have recruiting, and that means the transfer portal now too. And it's certainly that's changing with the portal and with name, image, and likeness. So yeah, as it changes, I think programs need to change along with it. What do they say, Zach? If you don't adapt, you die. So it makes sense. To me, it makes sense. And I know that like some fans have like started making fun of the Army and why do you have so many people and this and that. Like I think, I had a coach from the Big Ten reach out to me Billy's first year when we were writing, seemingly 4 stories a week about new hires, jealous about how much help Florida's coaches were getting and what did Billy do? What did Billy say? What's the magic word or question or demand to get this kind of help? Because it's a lot. And I've sat here on my soapbox yelling that the college calendar is a disaster. And you're going to see any able-bodied coach who the NFL wants leave because it's a much easier job. I think getting a staff like the one Florida has. Now, listen, everyone has to do their jobs. But I think you're going to see more programs that have that kind of budget, specifically the ones in the Big 12 or Big 10 and SEC who are going to be starting to getting more money. Start to use that on bigger staffs because the days of, only the 10 assistants and their 1 GA being able to go out and help you recruit, like you're not getting it done.
Yeah, no, it takes a lot more to be able to compete, and
also takes an NIL war chest, but that budget is significantly bigger than what you're using, to spend on balloons and cookie cakes and hosting, flights and hotels.
Well, the former that you just said they're going to actually now get to save some money on, so that'd be great. um,
Yeah.
not a waste on that. And you know, men's basketball also spent about 50 grand more in recruiting. Certainly not the jump that football saw, but we do know that this program and this athletic department is continuing to invest in Todd Golden
Yep.
along with Napier because it was reported by us and some others on Thursday that Todd Golden has agreed to a 2-year extension with the Gators after leading Florida to its best regular season in 7 years, on the cusp of an NCAA tournament berth, and then obviously in good position to make a run in March, not only in the NCAA tournament, but here in Nashville as well, as we see how this weekend plays out, Nick. But a lot of different reactions maybe to the contract extension. I thought most fans would just receive it well, but I
Mhm.
did see that some thought it was a little,
Especially given like the timing, like
yeah.
like Florida
But
made a nice little run.
like but I saw some fans not like it. Maybe because of the timing, like right before the tournament, like they were convinced that Florida was going to lose to Georgia because they extended Todd right before playing Mike White. Um, but I did see some fans that thought, and again, this is just some fans that thought that this might be a little bit too early to be extending Todd. Um, but obviously, Florida is wanting to lock him up and make sure that no one comes to try and poach him. I don't know if they could, but what are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, how many years did he have left? Like, remember when you never wanted a coach to have less years than a recruiting
Well,
cycle,
and there
and
you
you would
go. So
always.
he's already 2 years into a 6-year deal.
So he
So
had 4 years left. You start telling people like, hey, listen, Florida fires coaches quick. How many years does he have left?
he doesn't
Maybe you
even
don't
have
want to
4
go
years
there.
left.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that makes sense to me. I think someone told me, was talking to uh, some sources, let's say, and Todd had people, bigger boosters, coming up to him. Hey, what do you guys need? Where can I donate money? There's a planned renovation of the basketball practice facility, which they share with the women's team. And Todd was just like, listen, you need to donate it towards NIL. Like, that's how we're going to be successful here. Is having money to offer guys in the transfer portal, at the high school level. Like, what can Florida Victorious and what can NIL do for us here? It can't just be the Chandler Parsons and Joakim Noah's footing the bill every year. And I think you're seeing the fruits of Florida basketball's NIL, which was
Yeah.
very strong last year. Look at the team. You got Zion Pullin, all of these guys from the transfer portal. Portal got Todd. Shout out to him. And even Riley Kugel, getting him back took a nice NIL package. And
Yeah.
nobody bigger, I guess, than Kugel last night, hitting those 6 free throws at the end,
Yeah.
playing lockdown defense when Zion Pullin goes out of the game because of
Yep.
foul trouble. So to me, listen, Florida's got a lot of construction projects coming up, but to me, there's a basketball coach in Gainesville that sees where money needs to be spent right now. And if boosters are, if you walk up to him and say, Todd, I got a check for you, he goes, send it to Florida Victorious, earmark it for basketball because we need to continue recruiting. And right now, and in this day and age, NIL is recruiting.
Yeah, and this, it only is good, like Nick, you said, Nick, for the commitment that it shows to high school prospects, to transfers. Obviously, Florida's going to have a lot to sell on the recruiting trail and the transfer
Yeah.
portal after this season, and the results of not only the transfers that came in and guys earning all SEC honors, but look at what the freshmen have done. Obviously, Alex Condon going from unranked
Yeah.
recruit to all freshman in the SEC, and Thomas Howe as well, and what he's been able to do contributing off the bench. So, look, I get it. And I think Todd has certainly earned this extension. It's not like you're just doing it for recruiting purposes or for PR. This guy's had 5 wins over top 25 teams in his 2 years at Florida. Only one coach, Tommy Bartlett, earned that many in his first 2 years as the Florida coach. And that was back in the late 60s, Nick. So it's been a while. Obviously, the win over Kentucky was kind of the highlight of the season. Florida's first road win over a top 10 team since 2003. Florida's first road win over a top 10 team since 2003. It's a big deal when you go and then you do it in Rupp Arena. And I don't know how much people realize this, but this is the highest scoring team in school history that we've seen with this year's Gators. Obviously, Walter Clayton leading the team in scoring. He had 22 again last night, and came up big. He had that
big headband energy there, Zach. Big headband energy.
That's right. You mentioned Pullin getting fouled out, first team All SEC, and then Tyree Samuel got All SEC honors as well. So there's a lot that you can point to like about this program and where it's headed.
And that's why I wanted to point out Riley, because like this is your preseason and first team All SEC dude. Came back for a bunch of money, improve his draft stock, and has been coming off the bench all year. It's easy in his position to pout and be like, damn, I messed up. I shouldn't have come back. This is trash. This is garbage. I'm going to pout my way until we get bounced out first week of the tournament because they can't play without me, and be selfish. And what you've seen from him is the exact opposite of that. And that's culture. That's first off, a hat tip to Riley for not having that attitude, but also a hat tip to all of the coaches in that program for creating that culture. That's like, damn, this isn't going the way I thought. And even when Florida's losing, then it's like losing, and you're sitting there at the end of the bench, arms folded, being like, of course, because you're not playing me. And you don't see any of that attitude with that program. So I think if you were mad about Porter God Todd getting an extension, you can go kick rocks. Now, I will say this: it's interesting because it's not just Florida. If you're having to go portal heavy, which they did, you're going to lose a lot this year. You're going to have to go portal heavy again. And then what's the sustainability of that? You know what I think might help that, or might even hurt it? That'd be interesting. Science project would be, how much does a deep NCAA tournament run help your recruiting?
Yeah.
Because last year, Florida didn't have that, and they still were able to have a really nice portal class. But if you're not coaching deep into March, hey, why don't you come down to campus? We can talk to you face to face. Can't really do that if you're playing in the Sweet 16 in Houston or something like that.
Yeah, it's that is interesting because that wasn't something that Golden had to sell, and that Florida hadn't been to the tournament the year before that as well. So now you got some postseason success that you can add on to that, and as is Zion Pullin's success. They're going to have to go out and get a point guard in the transfer portal without question, and to be able to show what Pullin did and his assist to turnover ratio and how well that he's played, especially historically, that's going to be a huge selling point on the trail. And on that note, I just want to get your thoughts on this, Nick. And I'm sure some Florida fans might have saw this, and maybe some don't think it's a big deal, but I was shocked by this because clearly the league coaches in the SEC said Zion Pullin is a first-team All-SEC guard at the time when he was leading the nation in assist to turnover ratio, and I think now he's second, but he's always up there in like the top 3. The nation, not the SEC, the nation, and second in the SEC in assists per game as well. But despite his play, despite his numbers, despite where he ranks nationally, and despite the league coaches saying he was first-team All-SEC, the AP media voters, Nick, didn't not only leave him off the first team, they left him off the second team as well. And it's the first time in school history that a player for Florida has received first-team honors from league coaches and then got shut out of the AP All-SEC team. Pullin didn't seem to care about it. Golden goes, that's a little bit of an oversight. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how does that happen, Nick? I mean, is it a regional thing? Do you think Florida not finishing in the top 25? Are they just going for putting guy? I mean, that's if you just look at the stats, how do you not put Pullin on there at all? Like,
Yeah, I always, I talk about this with the football top 25. So like the AP top 25 poll is just like 70 writers from around the country. And you and I can attest to this, like a little peek behind the curtain. If Florida plays at 3:30, like I see half of the noon games. I see maybe the end of the primetime games when I'm done working. And then
none
like
of the 3:30 games.
And then like shout out to the former Pac-12 After Dark. And you're only seeing the 3:30 games. So like if they offered me, if I was ever offered to be a top 25 voter, I'm like, I can't. You've got a bunch of beat writers who are only focusing on their beat, voting on everyone else and only looking at stats. So when you say, like, how do they look at these stats? I'm like, that's probably the only thing they're looking at. So I don't know.
Which is why it's so puzzling.
Yeah. So I don't have an answer for you. Like, I don't know how good or how many basketball writers vote for it. A lot of it is just assigned to papers. Like the Tampa Bay Times basketball writer will get to write or get a vote. The Gainesville Suns basketball writer will get a vote. The Houston Chronicles basketball writer will get a vote. And listen, if I got hired by somebody, like, we all know how much basketball I'm watching, I'd be like, can I pass this off to somebody?
Or hand me a stat sheet.
Yeah. We're going straight stats here, buddy.
Oh man. Final.
But like the same thing for baseball. Like there's 300 teams.
Yeah. I
300
mean, all
teams.
SEC would be easier to pick though.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, if anything, it's just some extra motivation for Zion. So
stop fouling out. Watch your hands. Keep your hands to yourself.
I posted this on the Gators Online message board and got, I thought, a pretty unanimous or close to unanimous reaction. But we'll talk about it. You guys listening right now live can leave your comments in the section. But in your mind, what does a successful March look like for Florida in the NCAA tournament as well as the SEC tournament? How many games in should they get with both? Does one hold more weight than the other? Obviously, I think everybody, would put the big dance over the conference tourney. But if the Gators make a deep run in the conference tournament, play for the championship game, or win it, does that lessen the blow of maybe getting bounced in the first or second round? Does it not help at all? As you think about this team, you think about the league and how tough this tournament is and what could be waiting the Gators in the big dance. What does success look like for you in March for Florida?
I think, honestly, just right now, beating Alabama on a neutral floor. You lost at their place.
In overtime.
To them and some Zebras. You won very convincingly at home.
Yeah.
Now we're on some neutral turf, even though Florida, I don't know what's been going on. Like, I think basketball is probably the sport that can be most influenced by calls. Maybe you could argue like the home plate umpire who's literally calling balls and strikes, but like you can catch on pretty quick. I think Florida getting to, let's say, the semifinal in the SEC tournament. If they win the SEC tournament, it's kind of like a pendulum, though. Like if you win the SEC tournament, your expectations for the NCAA tournament go higher. And I don't think Florida can go one and done in the NCAA tournament, and anyone will feel good about that.
Agreed.
I think you can go.
If anything, they'd be mad if you win the SEC tournament or play in the championship game and then you lose first round. It's like, what?
But I think I would be satisfied with Florida basketball if they beat Alabama, even if they lost their next game in the SEC tournament,
which would probably be Kentucky,
and they won one or two. If they get to the round of 32, if they beat Alabama, get to the round of 32, I say, hey, you're making progress. Now, again, with the way that they've recruited it's not like, okay, cool, our nice young team made some progress and they're all coming back next year. It's like, no, you're gonna have 4 new starters next year. But in terms of where the program is, I think that would make a statement, at least to me. You get to, Kentucky, or maybe even beat Kentucky, get to the SEC tournament championship game, win or lose. And then obviously if Florida gets out of that first weekend, gets to a Sweet 16, I think that it speaks volumes for what Todd Golden's done with the program and specifically what he did in the transfer portal last year.
Agreed. I'm with you. I think at the very least, almost regardless of what happens in the SEC tournament, I feel like Florida needs to win an NCAA tournament game, at least one. Like that's almost. I think if they don't win one, outside of winning the SEC championship, that I think that's like the only way that maybe you could make fans feel better, but it might make them matter because that's a great point you made, Nick.
It's just like winning the SEC. It's not like, oh, okay, well, that buys you a pass to lay an egg in the NCAA tournament. It's like, no, winning that means like, oh man, this team's playing hot. They're winning close, or they're winning big. They're peaking at the right time, and then you come out and you lose the NCAA tournament. Your season's over. You'd rather them have gone like one and done in the SEC tournament, and then got into a Final Four, and you're like, who the hell cares what happened in Nashville, baby? It's the Final Four. So like what you're doing this week will impact the perception and the expectations of the fans come March. I think, listen, you didn't even make the tournament last year, so winning a game in the tournament is progress. Just getting there is progress, but not the expectations, and you're not meeting expectations just by getting to the tournament as the men's basketball program at the University of Florida. I think I wouldn't say fans are wrong if they're unhappy that Florida goes 1-1 in the NCAA tournament. I won't say you're wrong. I'll say it's progress. I get if you're angry about that. I will not listen to anybody complaining if Florida gets to the second weekend.
Agreed.
If they get to the second weekend and lose in their Sweet 16 and somebody wants to argue, earmuffs, baby. I'm not listening to it.
Because they weren't a top 25 team all season, really. I mean, it's like 1 or 2 weeks that they were in. Quality-wise, were they there? But they certainly weren't top 15 consistently also. For them to make the Sweet 16, a little bit of an overachievement. And that was the most of the answers that we saw on our Gators Online message board. I think fans want to see Florida make it to Saturday in the SEC tournament, which would mean a win over Alabama. And they want to see them make it to the second or to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, which would mean Sweet 16. I think if both of those things happen, pretty much all Florida fans would come away from March saying this was a good run. Like, we made it to the semifinals. We made it to the Sweet 16. I think if they make it to Saturday, beat Alabama, win one game in the NCAA tournament, and then get bounced the second round, I think people will feel good, but they won't feel like it was a success. Because
also it's not, I'm not picking on Florida, I'm not being negative towards Florida, but like it to me at least, and let us know in the comments if you feel the same way. It would be different for me if, okay, they made a nice run in the SEC tournament, they peaked late, they won a game in the NCAA tournament. That's good to build on. To me, if you're bringing guys back, then yes, I feel really confident in saying that, but you're not. And it's not just Florida, because you'll probably get 100 guys from the SEC alone hit the transfer portal or graduate. Yeah. And it's just like, it's even more so than football. I think basketball is like you're cheering for teams year by year, and there's just not like the consistency between the draft. And if you're getting great guys to come, they're going one and done. And if they're not going one and done, they're shopping throughout the offseason. So like, I kind of I'm going back and forth with I think, if they didn't make it out, if they went 1-1 in the NCAA tournament and what they've done already in Nashville, feel good about that. And it's like, all right, well, that means nothing for next year because you only have a couple of guys coming back. Yeah. Impact players coming back.
They should, I think, get Walter Clayton back, which would be big. And they'll get
That would be his final year.
Yeah,
back.
he'll be a senior.
Yeah.
You get Micah Hand-Lockton back. You'll get Will Richard back. But you'll definitely losing Tyree Samuel and Zion Pullin, and I think Pullin will be the hardest to replace. I don't even know if they'll necessarily need to go find a big to replace Tyrese because of how well Condon has played. I just think you're going to roll with Condon and Hand-Lockton next year, but you're definitely going to have to go get a point guard for sure. Before we talk some baseball,
shout out to the International Towers next year.
What's that?
Where's Hand-Lockton from?
Australia.
And Condon?
Or no, excuse me, Condon is.
And where's Hand-Lockton from?
Hand-Lockton is from, oh man, you got me stumped. Oh man, now I gotta look it up.
He's from somewhere, isn't he?
I'm about to find out here. Thankfully, Google works.
No, just from North Carolina.
North Carolina.
That's right. He was from somebody. I thought he was from somewhere else. They had somebody from Germany. I thought it was him. I thought we had two international big men.
You're thinking of the offensive lineman for Florida.
Sure.
Let's give a shout out to My Perfect Franchise before we talk some UF baseball. If you are ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, or just wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. And as the Gators get after it in Nashville.
I was thinking Alex Simchek from Frankfurt. That's who I was thinking. I knew there was somebody from Europe, Zach. Nobody from Europe on the baseball team.
Well, you had it in there. It was in there.
It was there.
You weren't lost in the wilderness, just wandering around.
I normally am. Am.
Well, let's hope Florida's not lost in the wilderness this weekend against A&M. Number 4 team coming to town. Obviously, Florida baseball not too hot right now, coming off of a loss to Florida State. Also had the midweek loss to UCF. So, but Nick, you put out your mailbag this week. You answered fans' questions. I want to know if it's time to panic. Is it? And how do you feel about this team heading to this matchup?
Yeah, Texas A&M has a better batting average, more runs, more hits, more doubles, more triples, more RBIs, a better slugging percentage. They've walked more. Florida has walked 80 times this year. Texas A&M has walked 142. I'll come back to that note in a minute. Higher on base percentage. They've stolen more bases. They have the number 1 ERA in the entire country. And opponents are hitting just 190 off of them. They've also struck out more batters as a pitching staff than Florida. Start with A&M's pitching staff. They don't walk people, have 30 less walks than Florida's pitching staff, and more strikeouts, 213 strikeouts through 17 games. Florida's offense, while they are very talented, love striking out. One of their favorite things to do. There is a solid top 5 in the lineup with Colby Shelton, Jack Haglione, Luke Heyman, Tyler Shelnutt, Cade Curlin. Those guys are all have an OPS above 1,000. And then you've got to figure out some guys after them. What is the right mix there? And we'll see what they do at third base. Do you leave Dale Thomas in? Do you mix somebody else up? I think we'll see Jacob Guy continue to play in the outfield over Michael Robertson when there's lefties throwing, of which A&M will be throwing lefties on Friday. Tonight, Ryan Prager, and on Sunday, and Justin Lampkin. Ryan Prager is 4-0, the Friday night starter, with a 0.00 ERA, Zach. And the worst ERA pitcher of the weekend will be Saturday with Tanner Jones, who has a 1 ERA. And Justin Lampkins is under 1. Florida, I guess the argument is that A&M hasn't played a lot of people, but I would argue that Florida, California, Texas, when you play the Sam Houston states and when you play the smaller schools in the state of Texas, it's like when Florida plays FAU, JU, Stetson. There's really good talent that just stay at smaller schools to stay in state. It will be the best offense that Texas A&M has played this year. So I'm interested to see how Florida's bats navigate. Now, I wanted to go back to that walking stat. Texas A&M walks a metric ton. Very patient lineup. Florida's pitching staff has walked a ton of guys. So I need to see Florida land their off speed for strikes. Cade Fisher on Friday nights is barely throwing his changeup. And if he's not throwing his slider for strikes, he's throwing 91 to 94. They might as well have you on the mound throwing, Zach, because 91 to 94 for guys in the SEC, it's just batting practice. So you have to land that off-speed stuff. It's going to be a really challenging weekend for Florida if they continue getting behind in counts, because Texas A&M can swing the sticks and they have a great pitching staff. So we'll see. I'm not pushing the panic button yet. We're going to learn a lot about this baseball team playing number 4 Texas A&M. And then you go to LSU next weekend. LSU's having the same issues that Florida has. These are two teams that played for a national championship, 6 months ago?
Yeah.
And they're having some of the same issues. How do you replace Paul Skeens? How do you replace Dylan Cruz? How do you replace Wyatt Langford, Josh Rivera, Colby Halter, BT Riopel, Hurston Waldrop, Brandon Sproat? You're seeing that it is a little more challenging. So I'm not pushing the panic button yet. I think Florida still has some options. And just like Kevin O'Sullivan, I'm equally confused. I was out at more than a dozen scrimmages, inter squads in the fall and in the spring. And Luke McNeely didn't give up an earned run all fall facing Florida's lineup. And he has given up 16 earned runs and 8 1/3. Is it just like the moment? Is it different? Are these guys pressing? I don't know, but I'm sitting there with Kevin O'Sullivan. I have people asking me, hey, should Florida do this? Should Florida do that? And I'm like, who on the pitching staff is throwing well enough that you're like, yep, he'll replace him because he's struggling and he's pitching great? It seems like Bill Murray and Groundhog's Day. Every time Kevin O'Sullivan walks to the podium after a game, it's like, even when Florida wins, the pitching staff still gave up a bunch of runs, but Florida was able to win 10-7. So it's going to be on the pitching staff, and you're going to need some guys to grow up early, grow up quickly, not early, quickly. And if you don't, it's going to be a very long season.
Yeah, and some streaks on the line as well this weekend. First of all, the last time the Gators open SEC play against the Aggies at home, clean sweep in 2021.
Don't expect that this weekend, Zach.
Nope, don't expect that. But can the Gators expect a series victory? Because they have won 14 straight at home dating back to the 2022 season, if you count the super regional sweep against South Carolina. But 13 consecutive 3-game series wins in the regular season along with that. That's obviously going to be put to the test this weekend. Nick, can the Gators keep that going, and what will it take?
Yeah, it's going to take pitching. Like Florida's offense, I think Florida's offense will be able to score runs. I would set the over-under for strikeouts for Florida at 32.5, like 11 a game. You get 27 outs in a game. I think 11 of them each game will probably be by strikeout. Florida's going to strike out. They're going to hit home runs. They're going to get extra base hits. I think a successful weekend for Florida starts with Cade Fisher giving you 5-6 innings. You can't keep having your Friday night guy sets your entire weekend up. And if your Friday night guy can't get out of the 4th inning, you're going to your bullpen early and you're using guys who are now tired on Saturday and tired on Sunday.
Yeah.
As long as I've been at Florida, I guess other than my first year when Logan Shore as a freshman, just a kid from Coon Rapids, Minnesota shows up and you're like, where are you from? And starts pitching on Fridays as a freshman. Ever since then, since like 2015, Florida has had a dude on Friday nights. They don't have that right now. And I think I honestly think if Cade Fisher does not have a good game tonight, Friday night against Texas A&M, you'll see a change happen, whether that's Brandon Neely coming in to pitch on the weekends. I also think, depending on if Jack Caglione's parents, advisors, agents allow it, I think you'll see Jack move to Friday or move off of Sunday. That will be a couple week process because you're not going to have Jack, who is a top 5 pick in the Major League Draft, pitch on short rest just because your team is struggling. You're thinking about his future. So Jack would then pitch like Saturday in Baton Rouge and then Friday the following weekend. It would take some time to do that. But I think Cade Fisher is pitching for his weekend spot tonight. He has not given the Gators enough, just even longevity. You can deal with, hey, he gave up 3 runs, but he gave us 6 innings.
Yeah.
And even if he comes out of the game and it's tied 3-3 or we're down 3-2, that's fine. But you can't be giving up 4, 5, 6 runs and we're taking you out after 3 2/3.
That's not a recipe for success, Nick.
No, we're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a lot these next 2 weeks in SEC play. As I say all the time, the first month of the season is just to see who we can trust. Once SEC play comes, there's not many people that have earned trust yet. But the good news is, because nobody has stepped up, still plenty of time to step up as we get into SEC play.
Yeah, you're right, Nick. We're going to learn a lot about this baseball team. Obviously, Florida is back from spring break, so we'll learn a lot about the football team as well as they return to the practice field for spring camp. And we're going to learn here in the next few days how far the Gators can make it in Nashville and then where they're going to be seated for the NCAA tournament. So a lot to look forward to, a lot to catch up on and read at GatorsOnline.com. If you're not subscribed, make sure that you get in the door. You can do it for just $1 for the first month. And this is an important month between spring practices, March Madness, SEC baseball, recruiting visits heating up. So make sure you come check us out and make sure you like and subscribe as well on our Gators Online YouTube channel. And Nick and I will be back next week to see where things are headed with this baseball team, with this March Madness, and obviously how things look as the Gators return to the practice field in football. We'll see you guys next week for our next episode. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi.